The dinner was cold again. I stood in the kitchen, staring at two plates on the table. One belonged to me. The other belonged to my wife. Steam had disappeared from the food nearly an hour ago. The clock on the wall showed 9:47 p.m. Victoria had promised she'd be home by 7. My phone buzzed. A message. Not from her. A store promotion. I laughed under my breath. That was becoming a pattern. Even advertisements seemed more interested in talking to me than my own wife. I picked up my fork and forced myself to eat. The chicken tasted dry. The vegetables were cold. Across from me, the empty chair waited like it always did. At some point, I stopped setting the table because I expected company. I did it because old habits are hard to kill, especially when those habits are attached to love, or what used to be love. My eyes drifted toward the calendar hanging beside the refrigerator. A date had been circled in red. Today, our anniversary. 8 years. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of believing things would eventually get better. At noon, I had sent Victoria a message. Happy anniversary. A simple heart emoji followed it. The message still showed unread. I unlocked my phone again. Still unread. A strange ache settled in my stomach. Not anger. Not even disappointment anymore. Just exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying something heavy for too long. The front door finally opened. I looked up immediately. That reaction hadn't changed. No matter how many times she came home late, some part of me still waited. Victoria walked inside while typing on her phone. A gray business suit. Perfect hair. Sharp heels clicking against the floor. She moved through the house like she was passing through an airport terminal. Busy. Focused. Temporary. Long day. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Her attention never left the screen. She crossed the living room. There's dinner. Already ate. My fingers tightened around the fork. Oh, a few seconds passed. Then she glanced toward me. Sorry. Client meeting. I nodded. The apology sounded automatic. Something she had repeated so many times that it no longer carried meaning. Victoria walked upstairs. No anniversary. No mention of a date. No smile. No hug. Nothing. A minute later, a door closed. I sat alone at the table. Again, the untouched plate across from me somehow hurt more than if she had never come home at all, because at least absence was honest. This felt worse. This felt like being forgotten. 3 days later, I stood inside the grand ballroom of Carter Dynamics' annual celebration event. Hundreds of people filled the room. Music echoed through expensive speakers. Champagne glasses clinked. Laughter floated through the air. Victoria stood on stage beneath bright lights. Confident, admired, powerful. Everyone loved her. Everyone respected her. Everyone knew her. The giant screen behind her displayed photos from the company's journey. Investors, executives, business partners, awards, success. I watched from a table near the back. Not because I wanted to sit there, because nobody had reserved a seat for me near the front. Not even my wife. Victoria adjusted the microphone. The room quieted. I want to thank everyone who helped build this company. Applause followed immediately. She smiled. Then she began listing names. Board members, department heads, investors, mentors, team leaders. The list kept going. Each person stood when called. Each received applause. I waited. Maybe not for recognition. Just acknowledgement. A small sentence. A simple thank you. Anything. The speech continued. 5 minutes. 7 minutes. 10. My name never came. The realization hit slowly, like cold water rising around my feet. Then Victoria looked toward the front row. A warm smile appeared on her face, one I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Most importantly, I want to thank Ryan Bennett. Ryan stood. The crowd applauded loudly. Victoria laughed softly. If anyone understands me, it's Ryan. More applause. More smiles. Ryan looked genuinely embarrassed by the attention. Victoria continued. He has been my strongest support through everything. Something inside me cracked. Not because I thought she was having an affair. I didn't. That wasn't the problem. The problem was simpler and somehow more painful. The man standing beside her understood her, supported her, helped her, while I sat alone at the back of the room, wondering when I had stopped matching. The audience cheered. Victoria smiled at Ryan again. Then the event moved on. Nobody noticed me leaving. Not the guests. Not the employees. Not my wife. Outside, the night air felt cold against my skin. I sat inside my car for nearly 20 minutes. The engine stayed off. The city lights blurred beyond the windshield. Memories drifted through my mind. Birthdays she missed. Vacations canceled for work. Conversations interrupted by phone calls. Anniversaries forgotten. Promises delayed. Years passing. Always another meeting. Always another deadline. Always another reason. I had spent so long defending her. She's stressed. She's busy. She's trying. But sitting alone in that parking lot, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. Someone who values you finds time for you, no matter how busy life becomes. I drove home. The house felt unusually quiet. Or maybe I was finally hearing the silence. My gaze landed on a framed wedding photo hanging above the fireplace. Victoria and me, smiling, happy, certain. I walked toward it. My hands hesitated. Then I lifted the frame from the wall. Dust outlined the place where it had been hanging. I stared at the picture. The man in the photo looked hopeful. The woman beside him looked in love. I barely recognized either of them. The frame rested against the floor. A strange calm settled over me. Not relief, not peace, just acceptance. Maybe the marriage had ended long ago. Maybe I was simply the last person to notice. Hours passed. The clock crept closer to midnight. Victoria still hadn't called. No message. No question about where I had gone. No concern. Nothing. I sat alone in the living room, waiting. Part of me hated myself for waiting. But I did, because hope doesn't die all at once. It dies slowly, piece by piece. Then my phone suddenly lit up. My heart jumped. For one stupid second, I thought it was her. I grabbed the phone. The screen glowed in the darkness. Unknown number. A hospital. Confusion replaced disappointment. I answered immediately. Hello. The voice on the other end sounded serious. Professional. Mr. Carter? My grip tightened around the phone. Yes. We received your test results. A pause. Then words that made the room spin around me. We need you to come in as soon as possible. My pulse thundered in my ears. What? Another pause. Long enough to make my stomach drop. There's something we found that requires immediate attention. The wedding photo rested against the wall beside me. My wife's side of the bed remained empty upstairs. And suddenly, neither of those things felt like the biggest problem in my life anymore. The hospital waiting room smelled like coffee and disinfectant. People sat around me flipping through magazines, scrolling on phones, staring at walls. Life looked normal for them. For me, every second felt heavier than the last. A nurse appeared beside the doorway. Mr. Carter? I stood immediately. My legs felt strangely weak. This way. The doctor's office was quiet. A folder rested on his desk. My folder. He opened it carefully. His expression told me this wasn't going to be good news. I tried to prepare myself. Nothing prepared me enough. There are abnormalities in your test results. The room seemed smaller. My throat went dry. How serious? The doctor folded his hands. We found signs of a heart condition. The words hit harder than I expected. Heart condition. Not stress. Not exhaustion. Not something temporary. Something real. Something dangerous. My mind immediately went somewhere dark. Hospital beds. Funerals. Goodbyes. Regrets. The doctor continued speaking. There are treatments available. Medication. Lifestyle changes. Monitoring. His voice remained calm. Mine didn't. Am I dying? A long pause followed. Not because he wanted to scare me. Because he wanted to answer honestly. If you ignore it, the risks increase significantly. My hands slowly curled into fists. The doctor pointed toward several numbers on the report. Years of chronic stress can contribute to conditions like this. Stress. That word almost made me laugh. I had enough stress to fill an entire warehouse. Years of disappointment. Years of loneliness. Years of pretending everything was okay. The doctor slid several papers toward me. I need your signature here. I stared at the forms. Emergency contact. Medical history. Treatment authorization. My pen hovered above the page. Emergency contact. Victoria's name sat there. My wife. The person legally closest to me. The person who felt furthest away. I signed the paperwork alone. The scratching sound of the pen felt louder than it should have. When I finished, the doctor handed me another sheet. A treatment schedule, medication instructions, appointments, a second chance. Maybe, if I chose to take it. The drive home felt unreal. Traffic lights changed. Cars passed. People walked down sidewalks. The world kept moving. Meanwhile, one question repeated itself inside my head. What if time wasn't endless? For years, I had lived like tomorrow was guaranteed. Tomorrow she'd have more time. Tomorrow she'd notice me. Tomorrow things would improve. But what if tomorrow wasn't promised? What if I spent the rest of my life waiting for someone who never turned around? The thought stayed with me all afternoon. By evening, Victoria finally came home. Suitcases rested near the front door. She moved through the house quickly. Laptop, phone, documents, more phone calls, more emails. The familiar routine. I found her in the dining room reviewing notes. We need to talk. 1 second. Her fingers kept moving across the keyboard. A minute passed. Then another. I remained standing there. Eventually she glanced up. What is it? The words stuck in my throat. Not because I didn't know what to say. Because I suddenly realized how little space existed in her life for anything that wasn't work. I went to the hospital today. That got her attention. For about 3 seconds. What happened? I got my test results. She nodded. Then her phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Ryan. A small smile appeared. Not romantic. Just comfortable. Easy. The kind of smile I used to receive years ago. She answered immediately. Everything ready. I stood there while she listened. Perfect. A pause. I'll meet you at the airport. Another pause. Then a laugh. The call ended. My news had already vanished from her mind. She grabbed another folder. Sorry, what were you saying? The question hurt more than the diagnosis. I could have told her everything. The fear, the treatment, the possibility that my heart might fail if I kept living this way. Instead, I heard myself answer differently. Nothing important. She nodded. Good. I have an early flight. That was it. No follow-up. No concern. No questions. Nothing. She walked upstairs. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. I remained standing in the dining room long after she disappeared. The doctor had told me my heart was in danger. Yet somehow that conversation hurt worse. Victoria left for her business trip the next morning. No goodbye kiss. No lingering conversation. Just another rushed departure. The front door closed. Then the house became quiet. I sat alone in the kitchen. A coffee mug warmed my hands. For years, I had organized everything behind the scenes. Bills, repairs, appointments, family obligations, travel arrangements, birthdays, anniversaries, every invisible responsibility. Things Victoria rarely noticed because they were always handled. A thought entered my mind. What would happen if I stopped? The answer arrived quickly. Nothing. At least not immediately. The world wouldn't end. The house wouldn't collapse. Life would continue. Maybe I needed to continue too. Without waiting. Without chasing. Without begging. That afternoon I made a call. Daniel answered on the second ring. Ethan, a smile appeared despite everything. Still alive. That's good. You've been impossible to reach. I know. You disappear for 6 months and expect me not to complain? The familiar sarcasm felt refreshing. Normal. Human. For the first time in a long while, I laughed. Daniel immediately noticed. Wow, that's an actual laugh. Don't get used to it. Too late. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about Victoria. Not about marriage. Not about disappointment. We talked about life. Ideas. Plans. Old memories. The call ended with something unexpected. Come help me with a project. I leaned back. What kind of project? A business opportunity. The old version of me would have declined instantly. Victoria always came first. My schedule depended on hers. My priorities depended on hers. This time, the answer came easier. I'm interested. The next few weeks felt strange. Treatment started. Medication became part of my daily routine. Morning walks replaced late-night waiting. Healthier meals replaced stress eating. The changes were small, but they added up. Meanwhile, Victoria's messages became slightly more frequent. Mostly practical things. Questions, requests, problems, the internet bill, a missing document, an appointment she forgot. A reservation she assumed I had handled. I answered when necessary. Nothing more. One evening, 3 unread messages sat on my phone. Hours passed before I opened them. A month earlier, I would have responded immediately. Now they remained unanswered while I focused on myself. The shift felt uncomfortable, then surprisingly peaceful. Late one night, I opened my dresser drawer. My wedding ring rested on my finger. A simple circle of gold. 8 years of promises. 8 years of waiting. I turned it slowly. Memories flashed through my mind. The wedding. The vows. The hope. The man I used to be. Then I removed it. The ring settled inside the drawer with a soft metallic sound. I stared at it for several seconds. Part of me expected guilt. Instead, I felt clarity. Not because I had stopped loving Victoria, because I had finally started loving myself too. A few days later, while organizing old files in my home office, I opened a forgotten archive folder on my computer. Tax records, contracts, receipts, random documents. Then something caught my attention. An email chain, several years old. My name appeared in the subject line. Curious, I opened it. The first message made my stomach drop. The second made my hands shake. By the third email, I was no longer breathing normally. A secret, a decision, one Victoria had made years ago, without telling me. A decision that changed the course of my entire life. And I had just discovered proof. The email was dated 4 years ago. My hand stayed frozen on the mouse. The screen glowed in the darkness of my office. I read the message again, then again, and again. The words never changed. The opportunity had been real. A senior leadership position in Chicago. Double the salary. A chance to build something of my own. A chance I had dreamed about for years. The company had reached out directly. They wanted me. Not a recommendation. Not an interview. An offer. An actual offer. The next email made my stomach twist. A response had been sent from my account, politely declining, thanking them for their consideration, explaining that I wasn't interested in relocating. The problem was simple. I had never written it. My pulse hammered in my ears. Then I saw another message. Victoria's email. The date matched. The company representative had contacted her after receiving the decline. A short conversation followed. One sentence stood out. Ethan's future is here with me. Moving isn't an option. I stared at the screen. Every memory from those years suddenly felt different. I remembered hearing about that position from an old coworker. I remembered feeling disappointed when nobody contacted me. I remembered Victoria comforting me, telling me the company probably chose someone else. The truth sat right in front of me. Nobody chose someone else. She chose for me, without asking, without telling me, without giving me the chance. My chair rolled backward. The room felt too small, too quiet. For years believing a lie. For years mourning an opportunity that had actually been mine. The woman I trusted most had taken that choice away. Not because she hated me. That almost would have been easier. She did it because she believed she had the right. Victoria returned from her business trip 2 days later. I waited until dinner. Not because I needed time to calm down. Because I wanted to be certain. Certain of what I knew. Certain of what I was about to do. The front door opened. Her suitcase rolled across the floor. You're still awake. I sat at the dining table. A laptop rested in front of me. The email remained open. She noticed my expression immediately. Something about her posture changed. What happened? I turned the screen toward her. No explanation. No accusation. Just the truth. The color slowly drained from her face. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Victoria set her purse down carefully. Then she pulled out a chair. The movement felt strangely cautious, like she already knew where this conversation was going. When were you planning to tell me? She rubbed her temples. Ethan, no. My voice remained calm, almost too calm. When were you planning to tell me? The question lingered between us. She stared at the screen, then at the floor, then back at me. I wasn't. The honesty hit harder than any lie. I laughed once. A short, empty sound. At least that's honest. Victoria folded her arms. A defensive habit, one I had seen countless times. It wasn't that simple. Really, it would have destroyed everything we were building. The answer came quickly, too quickly, prepared, practiced, as if she had justified this decision to herself for years. I leaned back. Her jaw tightened. You know what I mean? No, I don't. The silence that followed felt heavier than shouting. You made a decision about my future without even speaking to me. I did what was best. The words landed like a slap. For a moment, I just stared at her, trying to understand, trying to find the woman I married somewhere behind that answer. What was best for who? Victoria looked away. That told me everything. Not me. Never me. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. Not because voices were raised, because truths kept appearing, one after another. Ugly, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore. I gave up opportunities to. She sat across from me, gripping the edge of the table. I sacrificed things for this marriage. I nodded slowly. I know. Then why are you acting like I'm some villain? The question hung there. I thought about it carefully. Then I shook my head. I don't think you're a villain. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. Then I continued. I think you stopped seeing me as a person. The tension returned immediately. I could see it in her eyes. Those words hurt. Good. The truth should hurt. You always made decisions alone. My voice remained steady. The vacations, the schedules, the priorities, the future. You decided everything. That's not fair. A bitter smile touched my face. Fair. I pointed toward the laptop. You stole 4 years from me. Victoria stood abruptly. I gave you stability. You gave me your version of stability. You had a good life. I had the life you chose. The room became very quiet. Neither of us moved. Neither of us blinked. Finally, she spoke again. Softly this time. I thought you'd thank me someday. That sentence broke something inside me. Not because it was cruel, because she genuinely believed it. She truly thought controlling my future was an act of love. The realization hurt more than the betrayal itself. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The decision had already been made. Not during the argument. Not during the discovery. Months earlier, the hospital, the diagnosis, the loneliness, the unanswered messages. This was simply the final piece. I called a lawyer. 3 days later, separation papers rested in front of me. The pen felt heavy. Not because I doubted myself, because endings always hurt, even when they're necessary. The lawyer pointed toward the signature line. Whenever you're ready. I signed. One signature. 8 years reduced to ink on paper. The strange part wasn't sadness. It was relief. The fight was over. The waiting was over. The excuses were over. Victoria found the documents that evening. She walked into the living room holding the envelope. Her expression was unreadable. You file? I nodded. She stared at me, as if she expected something else. An apology, a negotiation, a retreat. None came. This is really happening. Yes. The answer arrived without hesitation. That seemed to shake her more than anything. Not anger, not accusations. Certainty. Victoria sat down slowly. Her eyes moved across the room. The wedding photo was gone. The ring was gone. The old version of me was disappearing too. You aren't even fighting anymore. I met her gaze. I fought for years. Those words ended the conversation. Because they were true. And she knew it. The following weekend, I packed my suitcase. Clothes, books, documents, memories. Each item felt like another thread being cut. Victoria stood in the doorway at one point, watching, not speaking. My fingers paused over an old sweater she bought me years ago. The memory hurt, but not enough to stop. The suitcase eventually closed. The zipper sounded final. Near the front door, I unlocked my phone. Victoria's contact remained pinned to the top. Favorite, priority, emergency, everything. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I removed it. A small action. A huge change. The star disappeared. The contacts slid down the list. Just another name. Nothing more. I picked up my suitcase. Victoria remained by the hallway. Neither of us spoke. Words couldn't fix this. Not anymore. I walked out. This time, nobody stopped me. 3 days later, my phone rang. Grace, have you heard from Victoria? No. A pause. Then a sigh. You should know something. My grip tightened around the phone. What happened? Grace hesitated. Then her voice softened. She went into your bedroom. My heart skipped. And another pause. Your side of the closet is completely empty. I closed my eyes. The image appeared instantly. The empty hangers. The missing clothes. The absence. Proof that I was truly gone. Grace exhaled quietly. She finally broke down. The line went silent. And for the first time since I left, I wondered whether Victoria had finally realized what she had lost. The first message arrived at 6:12 in the morning. I noticed it while drinking coffee on the balcony of my apartment. Victoria, can we talk? Nothing else. No explanation. No urgency. Just 4 words. Months ago, I would have answered within seconds. Now I set the phone down and watched the sunrise instead. The message remained unread. So did the next one, and the one after that. Life had changed. Not overnight. Not through some dramatic transformation. One decision at a time. One morning walk. One doctor appointment. One business meeting. One moment of choosing myself. The man who used to wait beside a phone no longer existed. You're smiling more. Daniel dropped a folder onto the conference table. I glanced up. That's a problem? It's suspicious. A grin appeared on his face. Most people become less attractive when they hit their 30s. You somehow became happier. I laughed. Thanks. I think. The meeting room overlooked downtown. 6 months earlier, Daniel's project had been little more than an idea. Now clients were calling every week. Investors were showing interest. The business was growing faster than either of us expected. The strange part wasn't the success. It was how much I enjoyed building something again. Something that belonged to me. Not Victoria. Not our marriage. Me. Daniel leaned back. You're different. I knew exactly what he meant. The old Ethan apologized constantly. The old Ethan doubted every decision. The old Ethan built his life around someone else's priorities. That version had slowly disappeared. I finally got tired of asking for permission to exist. Daniel stared for a second, then nodded. Good. Victoria's third message arrived that evening. Can we meet? No reply. The fourth came 2 days later. I need to talk to you. Still nothing. The fifth was different. Ryan left the company. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I locked the phone. The message stayed unanswered. Not out of revenge. Not even anger. I simply didn't know what she expected me to do. Ryan leaving wasn't my problem. Not anymore. The next week, Grace called. You won't believe this. I adjusted my headphones. Try me. Victoria forgot to renew several contracts. That caught my attention. What? Apparently you handled all of that. A short laugh escaped me. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. Invisible work. The kind nobody notices until it stops getting done. Grace continued. There's more. Of course there was. Her assistant quit. What? No idea. Another pause. Mom says Victoria barely sleeps now. I stared through the office window. The image felt strange. Victoria always looked in control. Always prepared. Always confident. Yet piece by piece, things were slipping. Not because karma suddenly appeared. Because she was discovering how much support she used to have. Support she never acknowledged. A month later, I finally saw her again. Not intentionally. A networking event brought half the city's business community together. I was speaking with a client when movement near the entrance caught my attention. Victoria. The room noticed her immediately. People always did. Elegant dress. Perfect posture. The same confident presence. At least from a distance. Up close, the cracks were easier to see. The tired eyes. The hesitation. The way she scanned the room before spotting me. Our eyes met. She froze. Then started walking toward me. Every step seemed uncertain. Like she wasn't sure whether I would stay or leave. The old version of me would have stayed, rooted to the floor. The new version simply waited. Victoria stopped a few feet away. Ethan. I nodded politely. Victoria. A long pause followed. The kind that carries years inside it. You look well. So do you. The lies slipped out automatically. We both knew she looked exhausted. She folded her arms, then unfolded them. A small nervous habit, one I had rarely seen before. Can we talk? About what? Her lips parted, then closed. The answer didn't come immediately. That told me more than any speech could. Finally, she exhaled. Us. The word felt distant, like something from another lifetime. There isn't much left to discuss. Pain flashed across her face. Brief. Unavoidable. You really mean that? Yes. The honesty landed between us. Heavy. Final. Victoria stared at the floor. When she looked up again, Her expression had changed. Less defensive, more vulnerable. I didn't realize. My voice remained calm. That's the problem. She had no response to that. Because there wasn't one. 2 weeks later, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside sat a single key, the house key. A note accompanied it. No dramatic apology. No emotional confession. Just one sentence. You should have this. I held the key for a long time. Cold metal. A simple object. Yet it represented years of my life. The home, the marriage, the dreams, all reduced to something that fit in my palm. Eventually, I placed it in a drawer and closed it. Victoria kept trying. Not aggressively. Not desperately. Small attempts. Careful attempts. A birthday message. A holiday greeting. A question about my health. Most remained unanswered. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because every conversation felt like opening a wound that had finally started healing. Meanwhile, life kept moving forward. The business expanded. My health improved. The doctor smiled during appointments now. You've made remarkable progress. I smiled back. So, I've been told. The truth was simple. The medication helped. Exercise helped. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was emotional. Stress no longer controlled every hour of my day. The constant disappointment was gone. The waiting was gone. The loneliness wasn't gone completely, but no longer defined me. The real turning point came through Margaret. Victoria's mother called one evening. We had always gotten along. She never treated me like an outsider. I hope you're doing well. I'm trying. A soft sigh came through the phone. She's struggling. I knew who she meant. Neither of us needed to say the name. Margaret, just listen. The firmness in her voice surprised me. Then she continued. I told her something yesterday. I leaned back. What? Another pause. The kind that comes before an uncomfortable truth. I told her she spent years building a company while slowly destroying her marriage. The words hung in the air. I also told her she confused loyalty with permanence. I closed my eyes. Margaret continued. She thought you'd always be there. A lump formed in my throat. Not because the statement was wrong. Because it was painfully accurate. Maybe I thought that too. You loved her. That doesn't excuse everything. No. Her voice softened. But it explains a lot. A charity gala arrived 3 weeks later. Daniel convinced me to attend. The ballroom buzzed with conversation. Donors, executives, reporters, business leaders, the usual crowd. I expected a routine evening. Then Victoria stepped onto the stage. Confused murmurs spread through the audience. She wasn't scheduled to speak. Neither was I. Yet somehow my pulse quickened. Victoria adjusted the microphone. The room slowly quieted. She looked nervous. More nervous than I had ever seen her. Her gaze moved across the crowd. Eventually it found me. Then she began speaking. I spent years believing success justified every sacrifice. The audience listened carefully. So I sacrificed things that should never have been sacrificed. A strange feeling settled over the room. People sensed this wasn't about business. It was personal. Very personal. Victoria swallowed hard. When someone loves you enough to carry your burdens, it's easy to stop noticing the weight they're carrying. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. The room had become completely still. My greatest mistake wasn't losing my marriage. Emotion flickered across her face. It was believing the person beside me would never leave. My hands remained still at my sides. The crowd watched her, then watched me. And for the first time, Victoria told the truth in front of everyone. Not about business. Not about success. About us. About what she had done. About what she had lost. The speech ended beneath stunned silence. Then applause slowly began. People stood. Some looked inspired. Others looked emotional. I felt neither. Because while everyone else saw a brave confession, I wasn't sure it changed anything at all. The charity event ended hours ago. Yet Victoria's words refused to leave my mind. Not because they changed anything. Because they were the truth. The truth I had waited years to hear. The truth that arrived after it could no longer save us. My phone rested on the nightstand beside my bed. A new message waited on the screen. Please. One conversation. That's all I'm asking. I stared at it for a long time. Then I locked the phone. Sleep never came. Instead, Memories did. The wedding. The promises. The apartment where we started. The tiny kitchen where we burned dinners together. The nights we stayed awake planning our future. Back then, success wasn't the dream. We were. Somewhere along the way, that changed. And neither of us stopped it. 3 days later, I finally answered. Not because I had changed my mind. Because some endings deserve to be spoken out loud. Victoria suggested a small coffee shop near the river. The place used to be one of our favorites. I arrived early. Old habit. The table near the window was empty. Outside, the water moved quietly beneath gray clouds. The bell above the door rang. Victoria stepped inside. My breath caught for half a second. Not because I still belonged to her. Because she looked different. Not physically. Emotionally. The armor was gone. The confidence that once filled every room had softened. She sat across from me. Neither of us reached for the menus. Neither of us pretended this was a normal meeting. Thank you for coming. I nodded once. A long pause followed. Victoria wrapped both hands around her coffee cup, as if she needed something steady to hold. Finally, she spoke. I spent months thinking about what I would say. The corner of my mouth lifted slightly, and a sad smile appeared. Turns out there aren't enough words. That answer felt honest. More honest than anything she had told me in years. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was simply real. Victoria glanced toward the window, then back at me. I kept blaming work. Her voice stayed low. I blamed pressure, deadlines, expectations. She exhaled slowly. The truth is uglier. I remained quiet, letting her continue. I got used to you. The admission landed softly. It hurt more than shouting ever could. You handled everything. Her fingers tightened around the cup. The house, the bills, the family events. Another pause. My mistakes. The words seemed difficult to say. Good. They should be. I thought love would wait for me. Her eyes glistened slightly. I thought you would. A year ago, hearing that might have broken me. Now it only made me sad. Because she finally understood. Far too late. When the coffee cooled, we left together. Not as husband and wife. Just two people walking through the remains of something that once mattered. Victoria stopped near the river. This is where I proposed. I smiled faintly. No. Confusion crossed her face. I pointed toward a bench farther down the path. That one. For a moment, she stared at the bench. Then she laughed softly. The sound carried sadness inside it. I forgot. The words summed up our marriage better than either of us wanted. I remembered everything. She forgot. Not because she didn't care. Because she stopped paying attention. We walked toward the old bench. The same bench where our future once felt endless. Neither of us sat down. The memories were enough. Victoria slipped something from her purse. A folded letter. She held it carefully. I wrote this weeks ago. I accepted it. The paper felt heavier than it should have. What is it? A goodbye. My eyes moved from the envelope to her face. You already knew? A weak smile appeared. I think I knew the moment you stopped trying to convince me. The letter remained unopened in my hands. For now, dusk settled across the city. Streetlights flickered on. The world kept moving around us. Cars passed. People laughed somewhere in the distance. Life continued. Victoria leaned against the railing overlooking the river. I used to think success meant winning. Her gaze stayed fixed on the water. Now I know some victories cost too much. The sentence lingered in the air. Part of me wanted to comfort her. The old version of me definitely would have. The man who spent years protecting her from consequences. That man was gone. Not cruel. Not angry. Just wiser. I wasn't perfect either. Victoria turned toward me. I continued before she could interrupt. I kept accepting things I shouldn't have. The truth belonged to me too. I kept lowering the bar. A bitter laugh escaped. I called it patience. The river reflected the city lights. I should have walked away sooner. Victoria nodded slowly. Not arguing. Not defending herself. Simply accepting it. You deserved better. The words sounded sincere. Maybe that was why they hurt. Because she finally meant them. The final step happened a week later. The lawyer's office. The last signatures. The last paperwork. The last legal thread connecting our lives. Victoria arrived wearing a dark coat. I arrived carrying a small box. The divorce papers waited on the table. No drama, no shouting, no desperate attempts to stop the process. Just reality. The lawyer reviewed everything, then slid the documents toward us. Victoria signed first. Her hand trembled slightly. Mine didn't. Not because I stopped caring, because I had already grieved this marriage. Page by page, month by month, year by year. I signed my name, the final line, the final ending. The lawyer gathered the papers. It's done. Victoria closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. Done. One word. 8 years. Finished. Outside the building, I handed her the box. She frowned. What is this? Something that belongs to you. Victoria opened it carefully. Inside rested my wedding ring, alongside a photograph. Our wedding day, the last copy I still had. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. The ring caught sunlight. A small circle of gold. A promise. A lesson. A memory. Tears appeared in her eyes. Not dramatic. Not uncontrolled. Just quiet. Human. You kept it all this time. I nodded. Not because I was hoping. My voice remained calm. Because I wasn't ready. Victoria carefully touched the edge of the photograph, then lowered the lid. Neither of us needed to explain what that meant. The ring belonged to the past. So did we. That night, I returned home. The apartment felt peaceful, not empty. Peaceful. There was a difference. I opened Victoria's letter. The words inside were simple. No excuses. No attempts to rewrite history. Only truth. Only regret. Only acceptance. When I finished reading, I folded the paper carefully and placed it in a drawer. Not because I wanted to forget, because I no longer needed to carry it. The next morning, I removed the last photograph from my shelf. The final one. The final reminder. The image stayed in my hands for several seconds. Then it joined the others inside a storage box. Not destroyed. Not erased. Simply put away. Exactly where the past belonged. A week later, my doctor reviewed my latest test results. A smile appeared. You're doing great. I laughed. That's becoming a habit. It should. The office felt brighter than I remembered. Or maybe I was. Outside, the city buzzed with life. People hurried toward jobs, toward meetings, toward futures. Mine finally felt like my own. No waiting. No chasing. No asking someone else for permission to be happy. Just forward. One step at a time. One day at a time. One life at a time. That evening, my phone buzzed one final time. Victoria. The last message. No request. No apology. No plea. Just 3 words. Take care, Ethan. I stared at the screen, then toward the city skyline outside my window. The sun slowly rose above the buildings. Warm light spilled across the room. A new day. A new chapter. My thumb moved across the screen. The message disappeared. As the sun rose over the city, I deleted the last message she ever sent me. Not because I hated her, because I no longer needed it.